Obviously, Rob, the last year and a half have been a nightmare in very many ways because of the whole COVID pandemic and things like that, especially when it comes in our circles talking about how it's affected the movie industry. We have recently been going through a period where it looks like we've been in the recovery mode. We've been coming out of it. Everything's looking good. There's a vaccine. Everything's looking great. But then there's still a lot of people who didn't take it seriously. Combine that with the Delta variant, we've seen numbers starting to climb, and now we've got some movies getting delayed again. Paramount, of course, yesterday we talked about this, announced that they were moving their film Clifford the Big Red Dog off of its release schedule, and they don't know when they're going to put it back in. We discussed, now what's the possibility of Shang-Chi and all that kind of stuff, whatever. But Rob, one of the interesting things that we kind of floated for a second was, I don't know, maybe movie theaters should require proof of vaccination. We said, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's not going to happen. We're just kind of floating that. Well, maybe it is. As news has come out this morning, this is coming to us from Variety, that New York City, not the state as a whole, but New York City, is going to require vaccine proof for indoor restaurants, gyms, and performances. Now, this is what they said over there. New York City will require proof of vaccination for people going to indoor activities like restaurants, gyms, and performances, Mayor Bill de Blasio announced on Tuesday. The program will launch August 16th and will be enforced beginning September 13th. The policy is one of the first of its kind in the United States. Other large cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco have seen an increase in COVID-19 cases, and the Delta variant spreads have resumed requiring people to wear face masks indoor again. Now, what is not mentioned here specifically in the article, Rob, is movie theaters. They say performances, but they specifically then talk about like Broadway shows, people going indoor where there's actors on stage and things like that. So I didn't read anything in here about movie theaters, but if they're going to start requiring proof of vaccination to go into a restaurant, if they're going to start requiring proof of vaccination to go into a gym or to go into a Broadway show, it doesn't seem to me like, even if it's not listed right now, that it wouldn't be too far of a stretch for them to then include movie theaters. And for all we know, this is already including movie theaters. The article itself just doesn't include that here yet.
Right.
To me, it's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, I would think, hey, I'm vaccinated. So, I already know that my chances of contracting the virus are not eliminated, but they're drastically reduced. So I generally feel pretty comfortable whenever I go anyway. But if I knew going into a movie theater that everybody in there had shown proof of vaccination, I'd feel even more comfortable. And there's probably a number of people, Rob, that would feel more comfortable going to the movie theaters if they knew that everybody in there was vaccinated. That's the one side of the sword. On the other side of the sword, though, is that, well, that's like 48% of the American population right now that is eliminated from going to movie theaters. So on the one hand, yay, more people might feel comfortable going to the movie theaters. But on the other hand, well, the cutting edge of that is that you've now excluded a whole bunch of potential patrons from the movie theaters. So if I'm a movie theater owner, I'm not quite sure how I would feel about that. Good on one hand, bad on the other. So I'm not really sure how I'd feel about that. Now, as just an individual movie fan, as somebody who believes in science and things like that, I like the idea in principle, but that doesn't mean there aren't drawbacks. And we just talked about what that could be for the movie theater industry. So I'm not 100% sure whether it would be a good or a bad thing or not. Rob, you're seeing what's unfolding now in New York with them implementing a new rule that you're going to have to prove that you're vaccinated to go into certain indoor activities, restaurants, live shows, gyms, things like that. Could this extend to movie theaters? And if so, what would you see as the pros and the cons of such a move?
Well, I think it probably absolutely will extend to movie theaters. I mean, it does say performances. And I say that, well, I would assume I just assume it does apply to movie theaters. I mean, I think, what we're seeing here is like, now that we have more data with more and more vaccinated people and we're seeing the Delta variant, and there's a lot more data about how this disease is working. now that we have half the population vaccinated, we can talk about breakthrough infections, which there have been very few, and they're learning more about how this works. And the vaccinations have been, for the most part, working. And I think that really, as we're watching COVID cases go up, there's a common factor, John, in why people are coming down with COVID, and it's mostly those who are unvaccinated. So maybe in the next month we'll see a lot more people get vaccinated. At least I would hope so. So less people get sick. But this is still a raging global pandemic, and I think that these measures are something that are necessary. Unfortunately, I wish they weren't, but
Yeah, again, it is precarious, especially from a business point of view. What is going to be best for business and what's going to hurt business? And then the bigger question is what's best for society and what might hurt society and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
a lot of questions still out there. I just thought this was very interesting. I wasn't expecting to see this. Next interesting thing, Rob, do you think we could see other major cities like Los Angeles, like San Francisco, like Chicago? Do you think we could see other cities implement this? Or do you think they're going to take let's wait and see how much chaos this causes in New York first before we make a decision? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I mean, I think this is a situation that changes from, in a way, day to day, week to week. So maybe we can see cases go down in the next month. But the way our country is very divided, we don't have consensus. And without that, when half the country does one thing and half the country does something else, it's very difficult to bet on anything. And I think that's really hampering this country's ability to accomplish a goal. Thank God it's not like, I don't know, World War II, because where would America be then? Trying to figure out which way do we want to go. So I don't know, man. I'm hoping that things get better.
That's kind of what we're all hoping for here. The question is for you guys. It's at the very least, you could say it's a bold move. New York seems to be now requiring vaccinations for going inside. By the way, I've had a number of you guys in the live chat writing in saying that this move does include movie theaters, which is kind of interesting. Let's see how that all plays out. How are you guys feeling about this? Jump down into the comment section below civilly and leave your thoughts.